The Faithful Fanatic podcast is live. We're enjoying our victory Monday evening. Not to be the bearer of bad news, but after the Monday night football game, the Cardinals rather, are 4-2. The Rams are 4-2. The Seahawks are still 5-0. So even after all the great accomplishments of last night's game, the 49ers are still in the cellar of the NFC West. They're 3-3, but things look a lot brighter than they did last week. Reflecting on last night's game against the Rams, what was your greatest takeaway, would you say?
My greatest takeaway was the fact that the team had juice. They weren't playing like they were a bunch of injured dudes. They were playing like they had something to prove. And it looked like the leadership was standing out. Guys like George Kittle, Jimmy Garoppolo stepped up a little bit. Fred Warner on the other side. It appears that Jason Verrett is taking command of that secondary. So
He looks good.
A lot of things look really good from a leadership standpoint.
Yep. And last week on the pod, I said I was almost as interested as to how the team would come out, how their body language would look like, what the leadership would look like, more so than the actual final score of the game. And all things considered, grand scheme of things, you got to be happy with how this team answered getting clowned by the Miami Dolphins. You have to be very happy with that. What stood out to me most about this game, my greatest takeaway, is I think the 49ers found their identity. At least for now, they found their identity. They're a team that needs to have that run-first mentality, just like they did last year. They need to get creative with the run. And when they're not running the ball with Raheem Mostert, you're doing short passes at or behind the line of scrimmage or barely in front of it to Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle. Get the ball to your playmakers and let them go to work. That's what this team's best chance of winning is that exact same game plan. And I thought Kyle Shanahan did a tremendous job preparing, game planning for this game. So you got to tip your cap to Kyle Shanahan.
Absolutely. Kyle came out, first drive was a perfect drive to start the game. Came out and forced the Los Angeles Rams to play sideline to sideline. Forced that D-line to think before ever coming upfield. And that's what started the game. Because if you look at the rest of the game, that D-line, every motion, that D-line was thinking, damn, is Deebo Samuel going to get it? Is Brandon Ayuk going to get it? So that was the smartest thing to do, to get a legit defensive line like that who was tied for the leading sacks going, because that D-line looked discombobulated all night because they were afraid of the screens. They ran away. They ran a quick screen with George Kittle on the first drive. They were afraid of the sweeps, the reverses. So it was a great game plan from Kyle Shanahan.
I thought that first drive was phenomenal. It was a 6-play drive where the big four, I'm going to start calling them when they're all on the field together, Raheem Mostert, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and George Kittle all got the ball. And not only did they get the ball, it was like there was design plays to get them involved early. And another thing I said the 49ers must do in this game, one way or another, is find a way to score first. And that's exactly what they did. On the very first drive of the game, they marched right down the field and score. And you can't really ask anything more than that out of an opening drive. The other positives is that you're getting your playmakers involved. You're getting Jimmy Garoppolo in a rhythm. And just the approach to this game by Kyle Shanahan was flawless. The areas to victory, the key areas to victory going into this game, I said the 49ers needed to be run heavy. They needed to get the ball out of Jimmy Garoppolo's hands quick, neutralize the Rams pass rush, control the time of possession battle, and keep the Rams offense on the sideline as much as possible. Keep your defense fresh, and every single one of those boxes was checked off. All around phenomenal stuff from Kyle Shanahan and Robert Saleh.
Absolutely. My favorite part about the offense was the fact that we normally say get the ball in those guys' hands, but he made it an emphasis to get it in his best player's hands. Normally he calls a game plan, but doesn't necessarily have certain plays for certain guys. I've loved how he got it in their hands early and often, but I do want to see him get Brandon Ayuk the ball a little bit more often, because what happened was Brandon Ayuk, he's like Deebo Samuel. He's gonna pop off, and Deebo Samuel is known for breaking a big play. On the first drive, he popped off a big play. So I want to see him use Brandon Ayuk a little bit more in the passing game rather than as a gadget player like he's using Deebo Samuel, because Brandon Ayuk is more legit receiver than Deebo Samuel, and I think this offense could go next level if Brandon Ayuk takes that step as a receiver.
Yep, I would agree with that assessment. Ayuk is the one player that I would like to see get more involved in the offense. I believe he only had 2 touches, 2 receptions yesterday, wasn't featured in the ground game. And I do agree with you that he should be featured similarly as to how Deebo Samuel, is featured, but also more so as a true receiver. And going back to the 49ers finding their identity, I don't think there's anything wrong with having these gadget players like Deebo Samuel, and even George Kittle's not used as a traditional tight end, get them involved in other ways that break their traditional positions. And the jet sweeps to Deebo Samuel coming time and time again, even though you wouldn't necessarily think that as a passing play, it counts as a reception. Like, I love getting him involved in that sort of way, and I would love to see Brandon Ayuk used in a similar fashion and used down the field more. Jimmy Garoppolo took a shot down the field right before halftime. I thought Ayuk could have drew that pass interference call. He didn't really sell it. The referee flinched. He had his hand on his hip ready to throw out that flag, but definitely need to get Brandon Ayuk more involved. Kendrick Bourne was targeted a handful of times, had 2 receptions for over 40 yards, had a critical third down drop. I shouldn't say critical because it didn't cost the 49ers, and George Kittle had one as well. There's one area you'd like to see the offense improve. It's being a little more sure-handed on those critical downs like third down.
Yeah, like you said it. For me, those are critical downs. That's a critical drop, because what it could do is it could put the game away. So for me, that's what I was like, come on, guys. Like the George Kittle drop was crucial, and so was a Kendrick Bourne, because those are your 2 sure-handed receivers. And when they're dropping passes, it kind of kills your momentum. So I would like to see them get a little bit better on third downs, because there was a few big drops on third downs. But I want the fan base to pump the brakes on talking about Jimmy Garoppolo's stats. Because go ahead.
No, we'll get into Jimmy Garoppolo's stats, because I'm with you that this game that Kyle Shanahan called catered to Jimmy Garoppolo. He was not asked to do much. So with that being said, you have to pump the brakes on his performance, because I have his stats right now and I'll break them out because this seems like a great time. So throws that were less than 10 yards, throws less than 10 yards, less than 30 feet. He was 19 of 24 for 162 yards. Then you had throws between 10 and 20 yards for 106 yards. He was 4 of 6 on throws 10 to 12 yards for 106 yards, and then 20 yards or more down the field, he was 0 of 2. 223 yards were accumulated after the catch. 223 yards. There was fluctuating numbers as far as how many yards after the catch the 49ers receivers actually gained. I had it at 223. I was on Pro Football Reference, adding every single player's individual yard after catch total up. It amounted to 223. Jimmy Garoppolo threw for 268 yards. 268 yards. 223 of them were after the catch. So the game plan was clearly get your playmakers the ball quickly and let them do the rest. So yes, pump the brakes on Jimmy Garoppolo because he was not asked to do much. He delivered a strike to George Kittle on that 4th down from the Rams' 44-yard line, somewhere in the Rams territory, and just drilled it to George Kittle, who ended up scoring a touchdown. So I'm with you. You got to pump the brakes a little bit on Garoppolo's performance.
Yeah, and I believe most of his yards from the 10 and beyond. You said 10 to 15, correct?
What was that?
You said he had a 10 for 15. The 10 for 15 yards, he had 100 and something, 160.
between between 10 and 20 yards, he was 4 of 6 for 106 yards. Throws that were less than 10 yards, like right around the line of scrimmage, not even throwing it close to that 10-yard mark. He was 19 of 24 for a buck 62.
So yeah, so the 10 to 20 yards, most of those yards came from that George Kittle touchdown. That was a big play, a big chunk play.
Yep.
So for me, when I look at the stats, I seen a lot of people going, "Oh, Jimmy Garoppolo, 262, 3 touchdowns." Like, well, a lot of those yards were little touch passes to Debo Samuel and guys like that, quick screens. Those are extended handoffs. And if you can't make those throws, you shouldn't be in the NFL. So those throws to me in that game plan was was good. I don't knock the game plan because you have to do what you have to do to win. And I like it because it's a confidence booster for Jimmy Garoppolo and the
Yep.
offense. But at the end of the day, you can't sit here and say throw stats at people. I need context. And for the fan base who loves Jimmy Garoppolo, I mean, yes, it looked good. He was throwing some nice throws. But was he really carrying the team offensively by using his arm? Like, let's take a step back and analyze what he did. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't all Jimmy Garoppolo. It was Kyle Shanahan and the Yak Bros. So let's not get it twisted, guys.
Yeah, I agree with that. Garoppolo will certainly have to have his moments where he carries this team, but last night was not one of them. And it does not, his performance does not necessarily make me believe that we're going to see the Garoppolo we saw against the Saints in that comeback win down in New Orleans last year, that high scoring affair where George Kittle had the infamous yards after the catch on that run where he's getting pulled down by like 4 defenders. His face mask is getting yanked. That was Pete Garoppolo. And just because he had a flashy stat line last night, but the deeper you dig into it, the more you can tell that Kyle Shanahan did not ask much of him. Anybody watching the game that knows what they're talking about would say the same thing. It was the Yak Bros, like you're talking about, getting the ball out quickly, so quickly that Aaron Donald was a non-issue, and we'll jump in about the offensive line's great performance as well. But yes, pump the brakes on Jimmy Garoppolo. It was a solid first step as he gets ready to face more intense opponents. Got the Patriots coming up, and they have a solid defense. But the game plan was to run the ball, get the ball out of Garoppolo's hands quickly when it's thrown, and let your receivers and tight ends do the work. I thought Kyle Shanahan's commitment to the run game is a huge reason why the 49ers won. Raheem Mostert only averaged 3.8 yards per carry. That's extremely low for him. The team as a whole averaged 3.3 yards per carry throughout the entire game. That's not a good number, really. But just the fact that the 49ers didn't shy away from it, and yes, they were playing with the lead, so you want to hand the ball off more in that situation. And looking at the switch to go to JaMycal Hasty opposed to Jerick McKinnon was huge because once you have that lead in the third quarter, Mostert goes down, you're giving the ball to McKinnon. McKinnon's struggling to pick up yards on the early down. So what does Shanahan do? He goes to the undrafted rookie from Baylor who starts picking up chunk yardage on first down to get the 49ers in second and third and manageables, just like Raheem Mostert does.
I'll tell you right now, the first play JaMycal Hasty got the ball on a run play, I turned to my dad and said, he's going to be special. So JaMycal Hasty, there's a trait that I love when running backs are capable of doing. When you could jump cut and keep full speed and take it another boost for another 5-6 yards, that's special. Those are things that like Alvin Kamara have. Like certain guys like that. So when I look, he's gonna be really good in this Kyle Shanahan offense, and he might be a better fit for this offense than Jerick McKinnon right now, only because Jerick McKinnon no longer has that extreme burst and extreme athleticism that he once had due to that knee. But I do want to see JaMycal Hasty be involved in this offense a lot more. You could tell he's a dynamic player. He looks explosive. He made a lot of these Los Angeles Rams guys miss. So now when Raheem Mostert does come back, because he possibly going on the IR, we should have a good duo, a 1-2 punch in Mostert and JaMycal Hasty. But I do see Hasty carrying the load the rest of the 3-week span.
His role is certainly going to increase over the course of the coming weeks. Let's acknowledge the offensive line. It was their best performance of the season. They did not allow Jimmy Garoppolo to get sacked. Garoppolo was only hit, not hurt. It was hit about 2-3 times over the course of the entire game. And they made big number 99 of the Los Angeles Rams, Aaron Donald, who was leading the NFL in sacks. Exactly. Who's Aaron Donald? Aaron Donald, come on. 7.5 sacks. 7.5 sacks. And for those who don't know, Marco's taking a little jab because Aaron Donald at one of the Rams press conferences said he did not know who Deebo Samuel was when he was asked about him by a media member who asked a question regarding Deebo Samuel. And Aaron Donald goes, "Who's that? Who? So it became a thing on social media today that even Deebo Samuel himself came at Aaron Donald and said something along the lines of, "I'm sure you know who I am now," after he scored a touchdown last night and just had that run to clinch out the game where another jet sweep came across on a 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, somewhere in that ballpark and got the first down to seal the game for the 49ers, opposed to having to punt the ball away if he doesn't pick up that yardage. He just put his head down and just bullied the Rams for 2-3 yards. When he first got hit, he was still about 2 yards shy of the first down marker. And he just pushed them forward, had a nice little boost from Mike McGlinchey, who came in at the end. So Deebo Samuel clinched the game for the 49ers. But back to the offensive line, Mike McGlinchey is someone that I've been extremely hard on over the course of the year. And I always like to acknowledge that players that I've been hard on when they're doing well. I like to acknowledge those points. And Mike McGlinchey was phenomenal last night. His side of the line contributed to more rushing yards than Trent Williams' side. I have the stats right here. When the ball was ran outside of Mike McGlinchey on that right side of the offensive line, the 49ers carried the ball 12 times for 63 yards. That's a 5.25 yards per carry rate. Looking at Trent Williams on his side, 9 carries for 26 yards, only 2.9 yards per attempt. So Mike McGlinchey truly is one of the best run blocking tackles in the game. Despite the struggles in pass protection, he's been doing a phenomenal job as a run blocker. And I saw on Twitter today that he's right now rated the #1 run blocking tackle on Pro Football Focus.
I was just about to say that. And it shows who Mike McGlinchey is. He's more of a run blocker. And as he develops, I believe he's going to continue to develop as he works with eventually Joe Staley. So I think he's going to develop as a pass protector. But what I love to see from that offensive line, the main thing was Daniel Brunskill. He gave Aaron Donald the work.
Yeah,
and it brought me back to last season when he played the Los Angeles Rams. I believe it was his first career start at guard. And he did very well against Aaron Donald. So it was one of those things where I was coming into this matchup and going, well, if he can handle Aaron Donald, this offensive line can handle Aaron Donald. I think this is the confidence booster that they needed, because there was times where they put Aaron Donald on Mike McGlinchey, Daniel Brunskill. They even put him on Justin School on that side with Justin School and Laken Tomlinson when School came in, and they did a good job switching. That offensive line was the reason for success. Jimmy Garoppolo had a clean pocket most of the night when he did throw the ball downfield. But besides that, the run game and the attitude they played with set the tone early. Normally, you see our defense set the tone. Our offensive line set the tone early in the game by running the ball very, very strong.
Yeah, they came out and scored on the very first drive, and that really set the tone for the rest of the football game. They let the Rams know right off the bat that they were not going to go down easily, and that it was the Rams with the backs up against the wall the entire game. Very rarely do they even have the football. The time of possession battle was 22-38. That's just an astonishing difference. The 49ers controlled the ball when you round up 38 minutes of a 60-minute football game. So the game plan was just phenomenal. And Kyle Shanahan's game plan was not the only phenomenal game plan. Let's give Robert Saleh some credit for his bounce back performance after he was completely embarrassed by Ryan Fitzpatrick, who looked like Dan Marino last Sunday. What'd you think of the defense yesterday?
So the defense played extremely well. I need to see pressure. There's no pressure created. There's no pressure from that defensive line. There's no sacks. We had no sacks. But what made Robert Saleh's game plan easy is Jason Verrett is playing at an elite level right now. And when you have a corner in the secondary playing at an elite level, it makes your job a lot easier. And then when you add Emmanuel Moseley, who is a solid corner, he plays exceptionally well, except for that pass interference call that ended up being a touchdown he gave up. He had a solid performance. So Robert Saleh did good. But when you have your guys in the back end back, so you had Tart, Ward, Moseley, and Verrett, all good players, you should have a good game plan. And I don't think his game plan was good enough because there was times where there was guys running wide open and Jared Goff just missed them. And if Jared Goff would have been on his game, they probably would have made the game a lot more competitive. There was a touchdown that he missed.
That's a very good counterpoint. No, that's a very good counterpoint because I know a lot of people, myself included, gave Robert Saleh a lot of credit for holding the Rams to 16 points. That's a huge accomplishment. The Rams have a very potent offense, a lot of flashy skill position players, but Jared Goff was bad last night. He completed only 19 of 38 pass attempts. His ball placement was awful. He was missing a lot of receivers that were wide open. Like his throws were bad, very bad. And his touchdown passes, he had that one touchdown to Robert Woods where Jaquiski Tartt was almost in perfect coverage and the ball was just thrown like an inch or two beyond his fingertips. It was a great ball by Jared Goff. His best ball of the night by far. And then you had the touchdown bomb to Josh Reynolds where he scored on Emmanuel Moseley. Emmanuel Moseley played very well aside from that one play. And it was a bad play because not only did he give up the touchdown reception, he was flagged for pass interference and his ball skills just weren't there. It looked like he panicked knowing the ball was on its way to Reynolds, and that resulted in a touchdown. But outside of those two plays, it was a tremendous job by the 49ers defense, and they look good. They gave up over 5 yards per carry, but the Rams only ran the ball 19 times because they were playing from behind the majority of the game. There was a key series, the drive that ended in the Jason Verrett interception on the 4th and goal from the 2-yard line happened because Dre Greenlaw stopped the running back from scoring a touchdown. I forget which running back it was. It could have been Darrell Henderson, could have been Malcolm Brown, could have been Cam Akers. Whichever running back it was, Dre Greenlaw stopped them pushed him out of bounds around the 1-2 yard line. The next play was the Cooper Kupp incomplete pass where Kupp dropped the ball, but Emmanuel Moseley had pretty solid coverage. And then 4th and 2, Jason Verrett gets his interception, his first interception since 2016, and only his 10th appearance on a football field in a regular season football game since being a Pro Bowler in 2015. So Jason Verrett is all of a sudden solidifying this cornerback position that looked so grim last week. It was only a week ago that Brian Allen was getting torched, absolutely torched. And now you have a healthy Emmanuel Moseley, Jason Verrett that's playing out of his mind right now. Looks like he's in 2015 Pro Bowl form. The cornerback position has done a full 180 in just the span of 7 days. And we're not even talking about Mr. Richard Sherman, who may now be the 3rd best corner on this team.
Yeah, I think no, I wouldn't say 4th. I would say 3rd.
3rd outside corner.
Outside corner, yeah. But the thing is with that, the defense is you said it. They gave up too many rushing yards per attempt, and that's not going to bear well when you play teams who could run the ball. I mean, if the Rams would have started off running the ball early, they would have made this game a lot more interesting. If I was the Rams, even in the second half, I'm down. They were down 20, believe it was 21 to 6. I would have kept running the ball. They were getting 6 yards a pop. They came down and they had six rushing attempts and scored a touchdown without throwing the ball. Why not try to oppose your will at that point? So that's
Yep.
something that Robert Saleh needs to figure out, because there's cutback lanes. There's too many cutback lanes, and that's all eye discipline from the backside. The backside needs to be better. So Robert Saleh, I mean, I think he'll fix it, because those are fixable mistakes that Chris Kaserik could help fix on that D line. So I'm not worried about the defense. Defense has played phenomenal all season, besides the Dolphins game. My biggest concern is the pass rush. If we can't get to the quarterback once we start playing better, like Seattle, Russell Wilson's going to pick us apart. You could have the best secondary you want, but at some point you can't cover dudes for 3 to 4 seconds. It just doesn't work that way.
Doesn't work that way. And I did my week 6 studs and duds column for Sports Illustrated, and I kept everything positive because, week 5, I said, forget the studs and duds list. No one deserves individual acknowledgments for a positive performance when your team just got embarrassed by the Miami Dolphins. So I was harsh on the Niners, pointed out 100 duds. So this week, I kept everything positive, and I said, you know what? No one played poorly enough to be recognized as a dud when it was such a collective team win. And a couple comments I received were, what about the pass rush? Someone needs to acknowledge the pass rush and how they struggled last night getting to Goff. And I can't argue that. It's such a valid point, and you nailed it, that this pass rush is still lacking the firepower that they had last year, and it's obvious as to what the reasoning is behind that. You don't have Nick Bosa. Who knows if Dee Ford will ever come back and play football again? There's too many question marks there. But you're 100% right. Jared Goff had a lot of time to throw last night. And if he was on his game, it's probably a completely different ball game. But he laid an egg. He was terrible. Jared Goff was really, really bad last night. And just like you touched on, if it's any other quarterback, if it's Russell Wilson, you got Cam Newton next week, you play Aaron Rodgers, you have Drew Brees. If there's no pass rush, these quarterbacks are going to have a field day because, like you said, you can have any cornerback you want. You could line up Darrelle Revis, Richard Sherman in their primes. But if a quarterback has 5-6 seconds to throw, they're going to give up big plays. They're going to give up completions. It's inevitable. So the pass rush needs to step it up. And the one thing Robert Saleh didn't do last night, because he really didn't have to, was utilize Fred Warner and Jimmy Ward on those blitzes up the middle like we've seen him do over the course of the last couple weeks. The only non-defensive lineman I saw really coming in on a blitz was Jamar Taylor blitzing from the slot, something that K'Wan Williams would do quite frequently. So I think it was a conservative game plan by Robert Saleh. And the fact that it was conservative didn't matter because Jared Goff was off. The 49ers did a good job keeping everything underneath, minimizing big plays, except for that one Emmanuel Mosley bomb. So all things considered, you're happy with the defensive performance, but you're upset because the lack of the pass rush can have a huge effect on the defense moving forward when you're playing against better quarterbacks.
Yeah, and what I don't remember seeing the defensive line do any stunts or anything. You have to start stunting at some point. I mean, I know last season he would use Nick Bosa at the edge and he would loop around and come inside, like where the center normally is. And he hasn't done that. Yeah, you don't have Nick Bosa, but you have to try that to see try it with Armstead. Armstead's athletic enough to do that. Try it with Kevin Givens. Kevin Givens is athletic enough to do that. So I want to see him do something on the defensive line that could create confusion from the opposing offensive line, because at some point we have to just stop saying, hey, there's no pass rush, and figure something out, because if you plan on competing to make the playoffs, you're going to get exposed in the playoffs if you don't have a pass rush. And it's been shown. So create what you have with the guys you have. And I would like to see I know everyone's going to be like, no, Deion Jordan's not good. I would like to see Deion Jordan get in there a little bit more on third downs, because he provides a speed that we don't have on the D-line, and Kerry Hyder on the other side with Armstead inside. Move Armstead inside and let him go one-on-one with some guards, because he will definitely beat the guards if he goes one on one with them.
No, I absolutely agree with that. We have a comment here that says, "What does it take for us to call the season? Oh, for 0-4 out of the next 4 games." What is your take on that? When do the 49ers finally call it quits? And the title of tonight's show is "The 49ers Are Back," but are they back for now or for real? Meaning, was last night's game against the Rams a false sense of hope, or is this team season back on track? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, if they play the way they played last night, I see them going 3-4 against the next 4 opponents. I think they could beat the Patriots. Patriots didn't look too good last week, and they haven't really looked too good this season. The Seahawks are obviously on fire. The Packers got blown out by the Tampa Bay Bucks, and they don't look too good on their defense is terrible. Their defense is absolutely terrible. So if we could keep up with them and slow down Aaron Rodgers a tad bit, we should be fine. And then we have Drew Brees, who his arm strength is no longer there, and we could slow him down. But we also, if he gets going, can we keep up with his firepower? I believe so. We've shown it last year. So I don't think that I'm going to call it quits yet by the performance they played, and they showed that they're going to be a competitive team, even though they didn't look like it the past few weeks. So for me to call it quits on this season, I'm going to have to see the whole team start playing really bad, because last week showed that, hey, no, we have something to prove now, because all this media talk from they were ranked top 10 in power rankings and then they dropped down to 25 or 22. This team has a chip on its shoulder, and I think that's what they need to play with. And I don't think the season's over.
To answer this question for me, so again, the question is, what does it take for us to call it a season? Does the team have to lose its next 4 games? I think since there's only 10 games left, if the team ever falls below 2 games under 500, that's when you're probably turning the page. Maybe 3 games, but I'm going to keep it at 2 games. So if the team's ever 2 games under 500 from week 7 on, that's going to be extremely tough to come back from and make the playoffs. Where I stand with this team after last night, it was a very reassuring performance, very reassuring. Kyle Shanahan proved that he's the magician and the wizard that the 49er fan base thinks he is, that those in the media think he is. The play calling was phenomenal last night. Absolutely phenomenal. The concern I have, because the 49ers found their identity last night with running the ball with Raheem Mostert, getting the playmakers involved on short passes, letting them go to work after the catch. Raheem Mostert. Let's get into some injuries, because this can alter this team's identity moving forward after it looked like they found it last night. Raheem Mostert has a high ankle sprain, the same injury Jimmy Garoppolo has been dealing with. He most likely will be placed on injured reserve. Raheem Mostert, to me, is this team's MVP on offense. He's the most valuable player on offense. The one silver lining that I'm holding on to is that if you go back and look at the numbers from the Rams game, and these are numbers I talked about earlier, Raheem Mostert only averaged 3.8 yards per carry. He was not getting those big explosive runs like we usually see from him. His longest run was 15 yards, and outside of that, he was picking up 5-6 yards. Then he'd get stuffed a couple times. So the 3.8 yards per carry he was averaging last night can easily be replicated. JaMycal Hasty was averaging 4.1 yards per carry. He had the highest yards per carry total on the team. So I feel like as long as the 49ers stay committed to the ground game and understand that you're losing the big playability from Mostert, but still hand the ball off 25, 30 times per game, and they're averaging around 4 yards per carry, that's going to keep the chains moving. It's going to keep your defense off the field because you're sustaining long drives. So I don't feel as grim about losing Raheem Mostert as I once did, because after seeing the 49ers have such success, even though they weren't having long explosive runs, and them staying true and committed to the ground game was reassuring to me. So I like this team to move forward with JaMycal Hasty at running back. Let's talk about this because this is one of our topics coming up. How do you make up for losing Raheem Mostert for potentially 3 weeks? What should the game plan be? I'll jump on this and say JaMycal Hasty should now be this team's lead back. Jerick McKinnon can't be your lead back. He's a good third down receiving threat out of the backfield. You can mix him in on second down every once in a while. But the biggest thing that stood out to me last night is that Jerick McKinnon can't get those tough yards on first down. When you hand the ball off to Jerick McKinnon on first down, it's usually going to result in a 2nd and 9 or a 2nd and 11. When you give the ball to Raheem Mostert or JaMycal Hasty, those guys are putting you in a position to move the chains on 2nd and 3rd down. They're picking up 7-8 yards on first down. So if you're a fantasy football player looking for a running back, pick up JaMycal Hasty. I'm doing it. I'm putting my waiver claim on JaMycal Hasty because I feel like he's going to be this team's running back, the featured running back over the next couple weeks. I'm not as high as Jeff Wilson Jr. on others. I feel like he's most efficient as a pass catching threat and near the goal line. But on your side of the field, when the 49ers have the ball from their 49 to their 1 yard line, he's not that effective. He does not pick up a lot of yards when it's not a goal line situation. Of course, you don't even pick up a lot of yards in goal line situations because you're right there, but he does not pick up chunk yardage like that. So I do believe JaMycal Hasty will be this team's featured back. He's their best bet. And we have a comment here that says, go get Breida. And this is something that I tweeted out last night. If you can get Matt Breida right now for a 7th round draft pick, I would do it. He's familiar with the system. You don't have to coach him up. Matt Breida's ready to play this Sunday against the Patriots. He's being completely underutilized. He didn't sign a contract extension with the Dolphins. You have to pay him what? $1.6 million or something like that halfway through the year. He is the one player that can replicate Raheem Mostert's speed and big playability. I would not be opposed to trading a 7th round draft pick. I'm not saying to trade any sort of crazy draft capital, but a 7th round draft pick for Matt Breida, I would do it.
So last week, I wouldn't trade for Matt Breida. First of all, he wouldn't be able to play against the Patriots due to the new COVID protocol where they have to sit out 6 days for COVID testing. So he gets in, if you trade for him, he gets in today or tomorrow, Tuesday, possibly Wednesday. So he wouldn't make the game. So that's 1 week without him.
Let me stop you right there. So he's been getting tested regularly with the Dolphins. I don't know what the protocol is in regards to that, but you'd figure that it would be the same as just going to the Dolphins to get tested. Am I wrong?
No, they changed it. What they did is because of the high COVID cases of the past few weeks, they changed it where if you trade for a player or you claim a player, they have to sit 6 days and take 6 negative tests at your facility. So, for example, Parnell Motley, who the 49ers claimed off the waivers from the Buccaneers, he was on their active roster and he was being tested every day. But he wasn't able to play for the 49ers or shoot up for the 49ers this week, and he was not available to enter their facility until today, Monday, because of the new COVID protocols.
I saw a report that Motley was there on Thursday. I could be wrong, but I'm not 100% certain on the whole COVID protocols. I'm trying to think off the top of my head if the 49ers called someone in. Like, take Brian Allen, for example. I guess he spent the previous week on the practice squad before he was called up. So I'm not sure of all the rules regarding COVID and if a player, that's a good example though with Motley. So maybe if the team, let's get back to the point talking about Breida. You would not trade for Breida.
No, I wouldn't because last week Jeff Wilson Jr. It was a small sample size, but he averaged 6.8 yards on his carries against the Dolphins. He had four attempts and he had 27 yards.
In garbage time.
But he's shown me even in the earlier season that he's capable of being a decent back, being capable of picking up 3-4 yards. He runs hard. He runs physical. So he's going to get you 3 to 4 yards if he runs the ball. So I'm going to roll with JaMycal Hasty, have Jerick McKinnon take some snaps. But I also want to see Jeff Wilson thrown in there a little bit, because what it does is it's going to keep Jerick McKinnon and JaMycal Hasty fresh. And JaMycal Hasty's never gotten a workload in the NFL. He's never gotten hit in the NFL as much as Raheem Mostert and stuff. So his body might take a toll on his body early, and we might see him lose a little bit of juice later in the season. So I want them to platoon everyone, because what it's going to do is going to keep us fresh, and that's how we're going to win games, by running the ball all game and not allowing JaMycal Hasty to get tired at any point.
Yeah, I feel like the 49ers and their running back by committee approach already enables JaMycal Hasty to stay fresh. The only thing that I would argue is that Jeff Wilson Jr. does not have – he may be better than Matt Breida in certain areas. Breida was never a serious threat to catch the ball out of the backfield. Despite not getting a lot of opportunities to do that, Jeff Wilson Jr. feels like he capitalizes on every single opportunity he has to be a receiving threat. Just the one area to me that's crystal clear that there's a substantial difference is the speed. Matt Breida hits that hole and goes. We've seen him have so many long touchdowns, whereas we have not seen that from Jeff Wilson Jr. He's been a goal line back, and with Raheem Mostert potentially heading to IR, I would like the 49ers to add that element of speed, because there's the strong possibility this ground game could struggle like we've seen before without Mostert. Let's jump in to some other injuries. So Ben Garland, the starting center, he may also end up on IR with the calf injury. And then you have Jaquiski Tartt, who injured his groin, and Marcel Harris stepped in for him. And Trent Williams, he was evaluated for a head injury last night, then all of a sudden hurt his ankle, and he's being further evaluated. So you have 4 starters, Garland and Mostert, who will most likely end up on IR and miss a minimum of 3 weeks. And then you have Jaquiski Tartt and Trent Williams, who it's uncertain whether or not how serious their injuries are. But let's go ahead. We just spent time talking about replacing Mostert. What should the plan be for Ben Garland? Is it going to be Grasu coming in?
Yeah, so it's going to be Grasu coming in. I mean, he's had the most reps at center since
And he's looked good at center.
Yeah, he's looked good. I mean, he's capable of being a spot guy. But I do think they're going to activate Dakota Shepley. He's from the Canadian Football League. He was drafted in the first round. I believe he was drafted 4th overall in the first in the Canadian Football League. So
I was about to say, I was like, this guy was not a 4th overall draft pick in the NFL. No. I mean,
no, yeah, absolutely not. But so he's probably going to be given reps of center in practice. But there's also the possibility of them going, hey, Daniel Brunskill, I know you just had a great week, but we really like you better than Grasu at center, which I wouldn't do, but who knows?
Yeah. So let's keep it this way. What would you do? Keep it as is with Grasu?
Yeah, I would keep it as is with Grasu, because the offensive line played really well last week. So now you're only replacing Grasu, so it makes it a little bit easier than moving Brunskill and everyone else.
Yeah. No, I agree with the continuity. Let's jump in. This is your time to shine. So if Trent Williams cannot go, we'll most likely see Justin Skule at left tackle. And I don't know if there's a bigger Justin Skule hype man than yourself. So let's say Justin Skule is the starting left tackle next week because Trent Williams can't go. What should fans expect from Justin Skule? And we saw a glimpse of him last year when Joe Staley and Mike McGlinchey were out. But what's your take on Justin Skule?
Relax, everyone, relax. Let's take it easy. So when Trent Williams went down, one of my uncles was like, "Whoa, man, he's our best tackle, best player." I was like, "Hey, take it easy, man. We have Justin Skule coming in. Don't even worry." And he was like, "Who's that?" His first 2 pass pro sets, they came in. I was thinking, okay, they're gonna run the ball, because I don't know how serious Trent Williams' injury is. Run the ball, let him get comfortable real quick. Nah, Kyle Shanahan had confidence in him. Drop back, Justin Skule, perfect pass pro set. Another one, perfect pass pro set. And actually the second one was when Aaron Donald was lined up on him, and they did a switch with Aaron Donald and the other in the defensive tackle on him and Laken Tomlinson. So I think Justin Skule is going to be more than capable of stepping in and being very solid. What I've seen from last year, he's very capable of doing so. He didn't have the strength of last year. I talked to his strength and conditioning coach, who was also George Kittle's coach. He's packed on a lot of strength. They worked on his stance so he's more comfortable. Justin School's ready. This is his time. He's ready to show that he's capable of playing tackle if he needs to. But I don't think Trent Williams will be out.
Well, let's say that Trent Williams is out. What I think this is a good opportunity for, this is something that we've talked about in previous pods, that it's a trial run to see if Justin School can be your left tackle of the future. Trent Williams is a unrestricted free agent. He can probably get $15 million, $16 million, somewhere in that ballpark, being paid as one of the premier left tackles in the NFL. That's a lot of money. The 49ers are already strapped up against the cap. Last time I checked, they had 171.5, somewhere in that ballpark, million dollars allocated to next year's cap. The cap could be as low as 175 million. So you're up there against the cap already. So you may have to get creative in ways to save money. You never want to fool around with the left tackle position. It's a premium position in the NFL. You need to have a solid left tackle and solid left tackle play to be a competitor. And if Justin School can prove that, maybe you don't give Trent Williams that big contract. So this is a great opportunity for Justin School to get some run, get some playing time, and build off that solid rookie season he had last year. Let's talk about Jaquiski Tartt. If he can't go, he has a groin injury, and it's concerning to me because Jamal Adams up in Seattle has been dealing with a groin injury since week 2, week 3. He still has not returned. The team is fresh off their bye week, getting ready for their game against the Cardinals, who they play this Sunday, and Jamal Adams may not play again because of his groin. Groin injuries can linger. So what should the plan be at safety if Jaquiski Tartt can't go?
So I do like Marcel Harris. I think he's capable. But put your best players on the field. Tarvarius Moore should be playing safety over Marcel Harris. He's a better player than Marcel Harris. You drafted a dude. Nick will say it. You drafted a dude in the 3rd round. Why is he not on the field?
Yeah, I know.
So
it's terrible.
Use him. This is a time to play him and see if he's capable of playing that safety position and eventually moving on from Tartt in the offseason. So this is a perfect example, like you said, with Justin School. What do you have in Tarvarius Moore?
Looking at the safeties as a whole, it may end up being that the 49ers paid the wrong safety in Jimmy Ward because Jaquiski Tartt has been playing significantly better. But now that Tartt's out, what I would do is I wouldn't mind seeing a safety by committee approach as far as subbing in Moore and Harris and maybe splitting the snaps 50-50 or somewhere in that ballpark. I just want to see Tarvarius Moore get more reps. So I wouldn't mind seeing the approach. This is personally what I would do, is you can have Jimmy Ward play free safety, play in the box. That's something he's used to doing. So you're not asking much of Jimmy Ward by playing both safety positions and kind of alternating. Then when you have Jimmy Ward playing the single high spot, you have Marcel Harris in the box. And when Jimmy Ward comes in the box, you have Tarvarius Moore playing single high. And at some point, you have to take a true look at Tarvarius Moore and assess what you have in him. You invested a 3rd round pick in him in 2018. He hasn't been in the league for 14 years, whatever it would be. 2018, you drafted him in the 3rd round. There's been no clear plan in place. And it's been a common theme with defensive backs on the 49ers that they have a hard time developing unless you're Emmanuel Mosley, who was an undrafted free agent. Safeties, cornerbacks that have been drafted in the late rounds haven't really developed in the 49ers system. Yes, Marcel Harris has been a solid backup safety and makes plays on special teams. Hell, even Adrian Colbert was the same way. But at some point, when you get your hands on a young cornerback or a defensive back in general, like Ahkello Witherspoon and Tarvarius Moore, Rashard Robinson, going back to 2016, who the 49ers traded in 2017 for a 5th round pick after a promising rookie year, you have to develop and mold these young guys. And the future of Ahkello Witherspoon does not look good. Rashard Robinson has had problems off the field. He's on the Cowboys practice squad right now. And then Tarvarius Moore, you see the potential when you watch him. He had big plays in the Super Bowl. The biggest stage of them all was making plays for you in the Super Bowl. And you're just not playing him at all on defense, and you're not prioritizing getting him on the field. So it's been frustrating to watch because when you invest that sort of draft capital in a player, you don't want them to be limited to being a gunner on special teams and to be third, fourth string safety.
Hey, Tarvarius Moore did pin the Rams at the 1 yard line, I believe.
Yeah,
Hey, that was a nice
that play.
play.
It was, well, of course, I mean, I'm not knocking him for only being a gunner on special teams, but I'm saying the 49ers have to give him more of an opportunity. But that was a great special teams play, though. He was like this close from touching the plane of the end zone, which would have resulted in a touchback. For those that are listening to the pod, I have my fingers held up here, but it was like 3 centimeters. Like, it was the smallest bit of green in between the back of Tarvarius Moore and the end zone. And that play pinned the Rams so deep. That was a great play.
Great play. He needs to see the field. That's the bottom line. Put him on the field. He's produced when he's on the field.
We're getting close to the 51-minute mark. We just hit the 51-minute mark. Let's answer our question with a quick explanation. Marco, are the 49ers back for now or back for real?
I think they're back for real. No, their defense isn't what it used to be, but they've been playing good all season. Kyle's starting to use his weapons. He used Debo, Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, utilized Kendrick Bourne, utilized his whole backfield. You guys, we got to realize Kyle's upset. People took shots at Kyle saying he should be fired. He's no longer the genius offensive coordinator. Kyle's upset. Kyle's going to get disrespectful right now, man. And that's what we need. We need Kyle to do what he did this week, every week, in order to keep going. And I think he's capable of doing that easily.
If it wasn't for Raheem Mostert's injury, I would be with you in saying that they're back for real, but I'm going to pump the brakes. I want to see a couple more games, maybe just even this one against the Patriots, before I can declare them back for now or back for real. So I'm going to say that they are back for now. They're on a high. They had a very convincing win against the Rams, but I need to see more. I need to see what you're going to do against a Bill Belichick defense, a Patriots team that's coming off 2 losses. When's the last time Bill Belichick lost 3 consecutive games? Who knows? Maybe that one year that Tom Brady tore his ACL and they had Matt Castle as their quarterback. Maybe that was the last time. So the 49ers could be back for real if they continue to stick with the ground game and these short passes, letting the Yak Bros go to work at the ball to Jimmy Garoppolo's hands quickly. Jimmy short throw Garoppolo. That's what I'm going to start calling him, and that's fine. Get the ball out of his hands quickly. Let him be decisive with his decision-making. Let your playmakers go to work. And when he does eventually need to drop back, we will get that from him. We've seen it before. So the 49ers are on the verge of being back for real, but I'm going to hold off just one last week until I see what the ground game can accomplish without Raheem Mostert. That's where I stand.
It's legit. That's a legit reason to say that, because he is the focal point of this offense.
All right, and we're going to close out by talking about our upcoming pod this Thursday. We have 2 of the most entertaining Bay Area media personalities joining us next Thursday, or this upcoming Thursday, excuse me. We will be joined by Joe, the Butcher Boy Shasky of 95.7 The Game, and Grant Cohn, our boss at All 49ers Sports Illustrated. We will have them both on at the same time. It'll be must-see TV, if you will, with those 2 guys, unfiltered, uncut, just raw talk in regards to the 49ers. This concludes our episode of the Faithful Fanatic podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in.